We are wired, we are made to serve. And that is the group of people that you have working to deliver this information to you today. Before I even talk about the webinar itself, I want to bring your attention to the program's website, which is called seniorlawday.info, because it has information on it that I think you could use today and in the days to come. That website, again, seniorlawday.info, is available to you, and it has quite a bit on it, but I just want to call out maybe 3 key features. The things that we're doing right now, all of these webinars that right now we have scheduled through June are posted here. You see the ones where here's where you can register. And this is the program we're having today. And in the coming weeks, you'll see Elder Law 101. Are you looking to sell your home in the midst of this pandemic? Information on the Medicaid redesign. So a lot is right there for you to grab, including if you miss any of our programs. You're able to get the latest one posted here, but up at the top of the page, don't mean to make you dizzy as I go up and down, we have this link that says 2020 webinars. All of the programs that have been recorded so far are posted there, as well as other content, particularly the Elder Law Q&A. That is one of our signature products, and this is an annually updated guide to all of the topics that you see listed here. A lot of the topics that we're going to be discussing in our webinars, but here goes your point of reference. You'll also notice on every page, and this is the thing I really want to call out to you, an Ask Us button. The Senior Law Day Collaborative is available throughout the year to answer your questions. So if you have a question coming out of today that doesn't get answered, please come to the website and post your question here. If you got a question tomorrow or next week, as the world around us continues to evolve, please come here to ask your question and we will get you an answer. So what else do I want to tell you? This meeting is being hosted on Zoom, so we can't hear you, but we can get your questions by your use of the Q&A button that should be on the bottom of your computer screen or tappable somewhere on your iPad. If you ask a question that we don't get to answer during the webinar, we will answer you after the webinar because we have your name when you type into the Q&A. Where do you go if you don't get to do that? You go to the Ask Us button on seniorlawday.info. I'm just really grateful that all of you have taken the time to become well-informed today, and I want to encourage you to take what you learned today and share it with others. With that, I'm going to turn our presentation over to Sarah Steckler, who is also a co-chair, and she's going to be moderating the event today.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for our first Q&A already today. So if you are a webinar participant, no one can see your screen except for you. You're just able to see the screens of all of the panelists. So fear not, your name, your information is all private and not being recorded. So welcome everybody. So today you're going to hear from 3 terrific panelists who are here to answer your questions on care management and nursing, financial planning and advising, as well as on elder law. And we've had some great questions so far that have come in through our Ask Us button. So thank you so much if you've submitted a question today. But if you haven't had a chance to submit your question, you can do so using the Q&A button up at the top, and we'll do our best to answer your question either during the live broadcast or after the program has been completed. So this morning, you're going to hear from 3 panelists: Karen Ronan, who's a geriatric care manager and registered nurse, Amir Ansari, who is a financial advisor, and our elder law attorney, Artem, who will be answering all of the legal questions. So one of the first questions that we received very early on when we posted this program was a nursing question, which is, how can I reduce the risk of my elderly parent from getting the coronavirus? If I go grocery shopping, should I wear a mask and gloves? Karen?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Westchester County. My name is Karen Ronan, and I'm a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for 26 years, and most of my career was spent in the city at a major, metropolitan area hospital. So for your elderly that are at home, we recommend that they stay at home as much as possible. If you need to see your doctor, there's a lot of virtual visits going on. Even with your urgent cares, you can still get an urgent, like say you have a cold and you're starting to worry, could this be the coronavirus? You can reach out to any of the MD Express and they will do a teleconference with you, which avoids you going into a waiting room and possibly having more exposure. Things like grocery shopping. Many people are doing pickups where you can call your local grocer and they will do a drive-by and put it in your trunk. These are all very valuable things to keep yourself safe during these times. If you have any family who can go out and get your food, get your medications, it's only best to stay at home during these times. Can you go out and garden? Sure. But if your neighbor comes over and says, hey, can I help you with that? Just politely say, I appreciate it, but I'm okay for now. And just take every day slow. Just listen to your body, as we always say. Another question is, if I have to go to the grocery store, do I wear gloves and do I wear a mask? Well, we all know now that we do have to wear masks. So something simple like a scarf. You don't have to wear the N95 masks, the very heavy ones. Something as simple as your regular surgical mask will do the trick. The idea behind the masks is to prevent the spread of the virus, more so than protecting you from it. So the easiest way is you put your mask on first before your gloves. Make sure you clean your hands before you start the process. Put your mask on while you're still clean. Then you would simply put one glove on. And this is before you go into the store. You're not going to do this in your car. You want to keep your car clean. You don't want to bring the virus with you. You want to keep it outside your car and your house. So now we're ready to go to the store. Gloves and mask and then your gloves. We go shopping. We try and stay away 6 feet from everybody. We check out, we press the buttons. Now we're back outside. We're gonna load our groceries in. We're not taking anything off yet. Put everything in the trunk, close your trunk. Now what? Do I bring the gloves in the car? No, because these are now dirty, right? So one of the misconceptions is I should wear my gloves until I get home. No. The way to take off your glove is you pinch and pull. These are very thick, sorry. So that it's balled. See, I never touch that glove. Then I take the other glove, pull it over. Bring a Ziploc bag with you. Put these gloves in the Ziploc bag. We're seeing a lot of people throwing them on the ground. Not a good idea. Put them in the Ziploc bag. If you have, bring Purell. Wash your hands with the Purell. Take one side of the mask off and pull it away from your face. Put that in the Ziploc bag as well. Lock the Ziploc bag and dispose of it. Either bring it home with you and put it in the trash. This way your car stays clean. A lot of people are bringing Clorox wipes and wiping the steering wheel. That's fine too. The idea is to constantly wash these hands. This is where the dirt stays. The gloves only protect you so much. When you get home, you can re-glove and take out your groceries to bring them into the house. But again, remember, they're only protecting you. You still need to wash.
All right, thank you, Karen. That was terrific. So I'm going to go over to Amir for a financial advising question that we received. So Amir, we got a question saying, when do I start planning for disability and long-term care? I never thought about it before all of this happened.
Well, good morning to all of you. Good morning to Westchester, to everyone that is watching. These are very uncertain times. But one good thing about this is, as you have seen everywhere, is that the community around you is rising to help, to give up in any way shape or form that they can. So rely on the fact that there is help around. That's a great question. Relative to disability and long-term care, obviously planning is a very, very important thing. And we usually want to make sure that we have put some plans in place to have disability or long-term care in place before we actually need them. So insofar as disability is concerned, you want to put that in place as early in life as possible, as young as you are. And because by the time as you get older, the chances of some disability affecting you, affecting your income, starts going away. And by the age of 65, you're reaching the retirement age, and there is not much disability policies or insurance plans that might be available for you. In terms of long-term care, now that is something that usually people start thinking about it when they have some incident in their family life that makes them think about what would happen if something like that happens to them. So this is the time that a lot of those things are happening. So you need to just basically make sure that there are resources available. And if you are within that age and health category that you can qualify for long-term care, then generally people start thinking about long-term care when they're in their 50s, mid-50s, and a lot of people wait until they're later 65 or 70, but there are time limits and age limits. So if you're in the mid-60s and you want to take a look at what long-term care options are available to you, I wholeheartedly recommend to everyone to seek out and see what potential plans are available for them. And once you reach ages above 71, 72, 73, it becomes a little bit more challenging, and it also becomes a little bit cost prohibitive. Sarah, one thing that I'd like to share with you for my own personal life is that I'm in New York, and my family was in California, and my sister and I put in place a long-term care plan for my mom when she was just reaching the age of 70. And basically we were children, we were my mom's children. And we said, Mom, you need to have something like this in place. And we took care of the premium and everything. And 6 years later, my mom needed long-term care. And oh boy, were we all glad that we had put that in place so that there were options that were available to take care of our mom, which was the most loved one that we had in our lives. So I want to say, as early as possible, and when you're in good health and when you don't need it, that is the time to start planning for putting insurance in plan. When an incident happens that affects your health and other situations in your life, then it might be a little bit too late. So I think that I want to focus on one aspect of life, which is planning. You got a plan, and if you put a plan in place, you can be prepared. And one important factor is that everyone should take into consideration is that it's never too late. It's never too late. There are always options.
Thank you, Amir. So Artem, we have another question that came in. So if you have not planned in advance and you cannot get long-term care or disability insurance and you need to apply for Medicaid, in New York State, the rules are changing as of October 1st. So if someone may need a home health aide, what should they think about now?
Thank you, Sarah. I hope everyone is staying home and staying safe. And to answer the question, so you're right, the rules for New York Community Medicaid are changing. A lot of people are aware that there was a 5-year look-back period when they first started looking into Medicaid. They see this look back. What does that mean, right? So for institutional Medicaid, there was always a 5-year look-back period where Medicaid, if you're submitting your application, will look at 5 years of your financial statements in order to determine whether you're eligible or not, right? So now the rules are that are currently in effect provide that for community Medicaid, if you're to receive home health care assistance, there is no look-back period. However, with the 2020-2021 budget, there has been changes which now will provide for a 3-year or, I'm sorry, 2.5-year or 30-month look-back period, which to be approved for community Medicaid services. So in order to qualify for Medicaid, it's a government-based needs program, so you need to have less than $15,750 of resources. And if you transfer assets out of your name in order to qualify, you will fall within this look-back period. Now, due to the pandemic, all of this has been put on pause, and the new rules go into effect starting October 1st. So if you need home health care aid assistance, at the moment, I would suggest to submit the application as soon as possible. We're awaiting guidance and kind of rulings, as this is all brand new, to provide us information as to whether or not this will be retroactive, or whether or not it will be, meaning that if you do transfer before the October 1st date, whether there's a potential that you will be disqualified. There's some people who believe that, yes, that will be the case based on if you have to certify your application, right? Which Medicaid requires everyone on an annual basis to submit information to show that you're still qualified for the Medicaid eligibility. And if they then retroactively look whether you've made any transfers before October 1st or in the 2.5 years before that, there might be a chance that they'll be disqualified. Now, we're not certain, so my advice is if you do need the assistance, do it as soon as possible. There's additional provisions that Medicaid is allowing people to apply without having to provide all of the documentation and be able to attest to certain documentation, because it is difficult for people to go out at the moment and gather the financial documents or provide the documentation that needs to be submitted with the Medicaid application. So, these are all minute details, but what I would advise is to contact an attorney like myself or another elder law practitioner like Sarah, and get advice, see what your options are at the moment and how you can submit the application potentially before the October 1st date. So I know that there's also, I don't know if you want me to get into this now, Sarah, I don't want to take up too much time, but there are ways to get documents executed that without having to do any in-person meetings, right? Everything's now being done virtually. And I can get to that in a little bit. Like I said, I don't want to take up too much time.
All right, thank you, Artem. So Karen, with the new Medicaid changes that are to take effect on October 1st, a question came in saying, what if I have Alzheimer's or dementia? Are there any special rules for those people in terms of needing to meet the new nursing criteria to get a home health aide in place?
Just to clarify, so what is needed today, or what will be needed in October?
Well, both. So what is needed now? So let's say a person has an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis and they need to get a home health aide in place, and they haven't planned in advance, so they don't have a long-term care insurance policy, and they're looking towards making a Medicaid application. From the nursing perspective, what should they expect now? And then what should they expect when the rules change? Are there any special carve-outs for people who have Alzheimer's and dementia versus people who don't?
Right. Okay. So today, New York State uses a system called the UAS system, which identifies how much care you need in terms of ADLs, right? So what does that mean? That means, can I bathe myself? Can I feed myself? How do I transfer? How do I get on and off the toilet? And then there's also the section of dementia. So dementia today in the assessment is weighted, but it's not weighted all that heavily. It's more heavily weighted on how much can you do for yourself is what the state would like to know. In the future, they are moving towards, they've now recognized that, the increase in dementia is on the rise and that, it needs to be looked at a little more carefully. So in October, you do not need to qualify with, you need at least one ADL, which means that you need help in bathing or you need help to eat. Because we all know that we have differences. Some people don't like to, be showered. So now the state is recognizing that dementia is prevalent and that it will be weighted more heavily come the new regulations. Whereas before, today, it's really just a diagnosis.
Under the new regulations, we heard that an independent doctor that Medicaid tells you have to go to is the one who has to provide that assessment. Is that true? And how do you find such a doctor? Is that person someone that if a client were to call you, you could point them to a list of who to call? Because this is a new person that the patient never will have met before.
Right. So today, the DOH forms are filled out by your private doctor. And what's been recognized is that, most doctors will ask for 24-hour care in hoping to get 8 hours and 10 hours. What the state has realized is that they need to take back some of this control and have independent doctors look at what are the needs of the patient. So as some of you may have gone through a car accident, you need to go to an individual insurance adjuster doctor that makes the decision. It will similarly look like that. The list for doctors have not come out yet. The other part of this is those who have been through the process have been first evaluated by a company named Maximus, which is your unbiased assessment outside of the MLTC. This company is now going to be determining how many hours that you get moving forward.
I think somebody had asked, ADL is activities of daily living.
Yes.
And so, that's part of the assessment that Medicaid makes a determination of how many hours to grant to someone. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Karen.
That's correct.
As I handle more of the legal side of things and getting the finances in order. And Karen is the person that you would need to speak to make sure that you would, your parent or your grandparent would get the appropriate amount of hours that they need in order to be able to thrive at home and avoid having to go into a nursing home facility.
Right, and also if they need a hospital bed or they need medical equipment and providers that you can get the Depends or the other sorts of items, the sanitary products through Medicaid to take advantage of those benefits.
I'll highlight one more point. I think the rules, they're brand new, so we're all kind of still finding out how these things are going to develop, and there's obviously no certainty on them yet because they haven't even been implemented. But one of the other things for people with Alzheimer's or dementia, they will also need to be diagnosed with a sense of needing supervision. I think that's part of the statute. It says, so besides needing more than one ADL, right, activity of daily living assistance, they also need to be qualified as needing supervision.
Correct. So as it stands right now, the assessment is not heavily weighted on safety. Yes, they look at safety, they're concerned about safety, but with the new guidelines, safety will now become more of an influencing factor in the hours of care.
All right, thank you, Karen. So I just at this time would like to take a moment to address some of the questions that have come in as we have been speaking. So the first question that came in, what is the look back period? As Artem mentioned, that look back period is 30 months or 2.5 years. And what that means is that during that 30-month period, you cannot have given assets to someone who's not your spouse or moved assets into a trust. So people are going to have to meet with an elder law attorney earlier in order to diagnose how the finances need to be aligned so they can obtain Medicaid when they need it.
And just to clarify on that point, that's for, keep in mind, that's for the community Medicaid. If you're staying.
That is correct. This is only community Medicaid. The nursing home rules remain at 5 years. The next question that came in, if someone does currently get home health aid, will that be reevaluated at some point? So when someone receives home care, they are reassessed either when their circumstances change or on an annual basis when the recertification has to be submitted. Karen, when someone's reevaluated, what does that look like, and how should a child or a geriatric care manager or nurse help a family advocate to make sure they get the care they need?
So typically there's always a 6 months assessment. So you have an assessment twice a year. The reassessment at the 6 month mark is basically they're just reassuring you and reassessing that the level of care has stayed the same, right? So is mom the same? Does she need more care? Some people do improve and they need less care. But for your first annual or your initial assessment is the most important, because that's the one that really lays the groundwork for how many hours of care you deserve and what you can appeal. You can always appeal at the 6 month mark. You also, if you've been in the hospital for more than 30 days, you're guaranteed a new assessment. If you have a new diagnosis or your health has deteriorated, say you were a borderline diabetic, but now you're on insulin, that may change things. You might need more care. You might not be able to draw off that insulin for yourself. You need a family member to do it. Those are the things that will increase your level of care and could possibly give you more hours. Come October, we have not heard yet what that will look like. The likelihood that it will be a 6 month period that you get a reassessment and your annual, I think will likely stay in place. But as for how the assessment is going to look, I am an assessor myself, but I have not heard anything from the DOH at this time saying, what are the new regulations looking like?
All right. Thank you, Karen. Another question that came in is, my parents are in their 80s. Should their house be in a trust? So with any kind of trust and estates or elder law plan, it's specific to the individual, their asset profile, if they need care now, if they need care in the future. So whoever asked that question should absolutely have a consultation with an elder law attorney to discuss their parents' plan and have their parents participate. If you haven't been in contact with someone, you can send us a note on the Ask Us button, and we will absolutely put you in contact with someone who will be able to sit down or virtually sit down at the moment and to give you a specific answer to that question. Also, a question came in regarding a supplemental needs trust that's already in existence. And as that question is very detailed and specific to a personal situation, we're going to answer that question offline. So you will hear from us after the program. Thank you so much for submitting your questions.
Just to add in like 2 cents to the question about the house and the trust, and I just want to clarify and reiterate what Sarah says. It's fact specific and depends on the person's circumstances. But keep in mind that what is the goal of why you're putting the house in a trust, right? If it's to protect the asset for potential future Medicaid, you got to now keep in mind the look back periods, right? And there might be alternative ways that you can protect that asset that are exempt, right? Medicaid does provide for transfers between spouses or transfers to a caretaker child who has resided with the parent for a certain period of time prior to needing Medicaid services, right? So trust isn't always sometimes it's a simple answer, but it's not always the answer that is needed. So that's why I think it's important to sit down, or in this instance, sit down virtually, right, and speak with a professional who can guide you that way. Additionally, if people own assets in multiple jurisdictions, a certain type of trust might be appropriate as well. So, it's really important to keep that in mind.
Exactly, that one size does not fit all with planning and elder law questions. It's specific to you. So we have another question that came in that we'll address partially offline regarding the supplemental needs trust. But Amir, if you'd be able to speak to the death of the stretch IRA that happened under the Secure Act in December, and as to the sorts of people who can still roll over an IRA.
Wonderful. On this particular question, there were certain specific things that I have not gotten myself up to. We have some age limitations that now after the age of 70, we have to, we have a period of 10 years that whatever is passed on needs to be distributed. And I'm not quite up on all the different perspectives because some changes happen. So I'd like to defer answering that to on a one-on-one basis if the opportunity arises.
Okay, terrific. So we have another question regarding assets. So with the market being so up and down, if an individual would like to guarantee a certain amount of fixed income, what should they be thinking about?
One of the things that, if you take a look at the Social Security or pension that are guaranteed for people, other options that are available for people are instruments like annuities. Annuities that can guarantee certain amount of income based on the type of assets that are moved into that annuity. And depending on the age of the individual and depending on the amount that can be moved into an annuity, different amounts of guaranteed payments and income can be guaranteed for the recipients. So there are quite a few different options that are available. And one thing that people really need to take into consideration is that surround themselves with the right advisors, with the right companies that can explain to them the different options that are available. So for example, we have a lot of retiring folks that are coming to the point of retirement, and they have accumulated IRAs, 401ks, or they've sold their businesses. And one of the things that they're very, very interested in guaranteeing for themselves is they're not accumulating anymore. They want to make sure that they receive a certain amount of guaranteed income for the rest of their lives. And should anything happen to them, then they want to make sure that whatever is remaining, whatever they have not utilized, go to their heirs and beneficiaries. So everything is really on an individual basis and needs and availability of assets, but annuities is a great resource that's available. And just think about, your pension system and your Social Security system is really a big annuity program that is guaranteed by either government or the company that you worked for all the years that you worked for them.
Thank you very much, Amir. So, Artem, if a sub-question came in regarding using a Medicaid trust and a house. So if the question is, if my spouse needs to go to a nursing home and I'm still living in the house, can Medicaid take my house?
So just to clarify the question, is the house already in a trust? Or are we talking about?
No, that from the question, I believe the house is not currently in a trust, but the spouse needs to go to a nursing home and the well spouse is still living in the house and they want to know if Medicaid can take their house.
So in that instance, no, Medicaid cannot take the house if the well spouse remains in the home. Medicaid can, however, put a lien against the house in the future and then try to recover the amount spent on the spouse that was in the nursing home once both spouses passed away. What the well spouse can do is potentially try to, protect that asset by, before a lien is placed, transferring it through one of the exempt transfer rules. If they in the future need Medicaid, or, potentially there might be a way to transfer the house out of their names once the sick spouse is already institutionalized and receiving Medicaid. Keep in mind that any transfer that the well spouse does during the application period before the sick spouse is approved for Medicaid will be penalizable to the sick spouse. So although transfers between spouses, right, is exempt, so one spouse can transfer all of their assets to the well spouse and then sign what's known as a spousal, the well spouse would sign what's known as a spousal refusal, and then the sick spouse can submit their application to Medicaid. And that, just as a side note, that was on the chopping block for the 2020 budget, but it remains. So the sick spouse exemption is still, the spousal refusal exemption is still available. So one spouse could transfer all of their assets to the well spouse, and then the sick spouse could apply for institutional Medicaid. This kind of triggers a domino effect because Medicaid can then look at the well spouse's assets in totality and see if they exceed a certain amount, which is the spousal exemption amount. And if it does, Medicaid can ask the well spouse to contribute to the care of the sick spouse, even though they signed a spousal refusal. Those lawsuits are, increasing. We're not seeing as many of them, but we are seeing more of them than we used to. So the well spouse is well advised to do some, no pun intended, but to do some planning in order to potentially protect those assets and do it at an appropriate time that it won't disqualify the sick spouse from being eligible for Medicaid benefits.
Thank you, Artem. So what I'm hearing is that everyone really just needs to plan, to talk to their elder law attorney, to talk to their financial advisor, and also to talk to their accountant, because there are ways to maximize benefits and to maximize your care without having to necessarily alter your lifestyle. So speaking to the right professional is so important, and also is a great thing to do while using your quarantine social distance time while you're all home, is to get everything in order. So we did have another question come in, which was also very tax specific regarding a 403B. So we're going to send that question asker a private note after this presentation. So your question will be addressed. Thank you so much for having that come in. So Karen, we did have another question come in saying, are assisted livings still accepting new people? We were going to look at various places for my parents before the coronavirus happened. And I really think they would be safer and happier in a social environment. Can people still move into assisted livings? And how would one locate a place to put mom and dad?
The assisted livings are still accepting. You would have to reach out to the ones that you're interested in and see what their protocols are at this time. You do have to keep in mind from a social aspect, they are all, semi-quarantined in their room. Whether you're in a nursing home or assisted living, all the meals are being taken to their rooms. There is no social gatherings. There's no bingo. There's no, movie night until the 6-foot distancing is taken away, which we don't know when that is. They will remain fairly isolated in a room, and there are no visitors at this time. But so people who have been infected with COVID, who need subacute rehab, they are in fact taking these people and, giving them the care and the rehab that they need. So yes, they still are accepting, but there are a lot of restrictions in place.
All right, thank you, Karen. So another sub-nursing question that came in for home care is, if I need oxygen, can a home health aide administer oxygen?
Unfortunately, they cannot, because it's considered anything that has a prescription attached to it, whether it's a medication. Oxygen is considered a medication. A doctor needs to write a prescription in order for you to have the oxygen in the home. So anything like a nebulizer or any kind of oxygenated apparatus is a skilled nursing. So you would have to have a nurse to administer that.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So Artem, one of the questions that we received with our Ask Us button before this presentation was, how can I get a power of attorney done in quarantine? Doesn't that document need to be notarized?
So the document does need to be notarized, that's correct. And but the Governor Cuomo, has issued an emergency order which permits notaries to act virtually. And so you don't have to meet with the notary in person. You can have the document notarized through a video teleconference, as we're doing today. The rules provide that the notary has to be able to interact with the person. The notary has to see a valid form of ID during the video conference, and the person has to affirm, right, legally swear that they are present in New York State at the moment. And then once the person signs the document or acknowledges their signature, they can send that document to the notary. They actually have to send it the same day to the notary by electronic means, fax, scan, and email, right? And then the notary—
Or you can take a picture with your phone and text it too. That's still electronic.
Right, correct. And they even have apps now which allow you, on your phone, you can basically take a picture and it converts it into a PDF, and you can then email it. The notary would then notarize and they can email that back to you, is one option. Or you can send the physical document to the notary. They have to receive it within 30 days from the date of the signing, and then they'll be able to notarize an original and send it back to you. So that goes for the power of attorneys, which again is a very important document for all seniors and all people actually during this time, especially when somebody doesn't know what's going to happen, to have, right? So you should contact an attorney to make sure that the document is prepared correctly, because besides the notary part, right, a thing that most people don't realize is a power of attorney in New York has a second document, right? Second document that is required in order to allow the agent you appoint. Right? Actually, let me backtrack just in case somebody doesn't know. A power of attorney is a document where you appoint somebody to be your agent to make financial decisions for you, right? You can limit the powers. You can make them as broad so that they can do everything you can do with your financial assets, or you can minimize them to only certain assets or only certain transactions, right? Dealing only with real estate or dealing only with banking transactions. It depends on the amount of faith and confidence you have that your agent is going to be acting properly. But my point was, without doing it properly, right, the agent is limited to making transfers of $500 a year out of the principal's name, right? So you need what's known as a statutory gift rider that goes along with the power of attorney and has to be properly executed in front of two witnesses, right? So this makes it a little bit more complicated. Now it's not just a notary. The notary can act as one witness, but you need another witness to be part of the conference to execute it properly. And that statutory gift rider will allow the principal to appoint an agent, and that agent to then transfer assets and do some of the planning that might be necessary in order to qualify that principal for Medicaid benefits, right? So that's one document that's necessary. And before we run out of time, the governor has also issued orders which allows a person to execute a healthcare proxy, which requires two witnesses as well. And the healthcare proxy is a document that allows somebody to appoint an agent to make medical decisions, right? very important at this time, if you're going to be, in a facility and you're going to be being hooked up to potentially ventilators, to have somebody in place to make those medical decisions, right? A corresponding document with the healthcare proxy that everyone should have at this time is the living will, okay? Also sometimes known as the healthcare decisions instructions. That document will instruct your agents and doctors what your wishes are as to end-of-life treatment, right? If there's no chance of recovery, whether or not you want to be kept alive on machines. I've even seen in these times, people have executed and added to their healthcare proxies provisions as to whether or not they want to be kept on ventilators and for how long, because the reality is being put on a ventilator isn't a 100% guarantee of, recovery.
Thank you, Artem. I just want to jump in and quickly ask the audience if you have any other questions to submit them now so we can address them, because we have about 10 minutes left of the program. And also, I'm going to ask Karen just to quickly explain what is a ventilator, what does it do, if someone's on one, can they talk, can they breathe for themselves, and other things that might be used for treatment for COVID, like dialysis or ECMO, and things for people to think about. And then I'm going to, if we get any other questions from the audience, address those, and then ask each of the panelists one closing question to get everyone's answer to. So, Karen.
So a ventilator is a machine that will do the breathing work for you. And it is what we call an invasive procedure. You need to have a tube that gets inserted into your throat and partially into your lungs. And basically what a ventilator does for you is it lets you rest. So it lets you, if the machine is doing the breathing for you, and lets your lungs heal. But so what can happen is if your lungs aren't healing and you're on a ventilator, you have to also, at some point, there's a juncture where you have to decide if the ventilator is doing any good or if it's actually doing some harm. And that's what we're seeing in the COVID pandemic, is that the doctors and the nurses are facing these struggling questions of, are we doing more harm than good? And if the lungs are not recovering the way they should be, then the ventilator is not going to be helpful in these situations. As for dialysis, a lot of the COVID patients, we're seeing a lot of renal failure, which dialysis comes into play because we then have to filter for the body. We have to do the kidneys work. And a lot of these times, both of these machines are put into play at the same time during, this horrible disease. Again, these are all things that the virus is imposing on our bodies, and everybody is reacting differently. Just because you're on a ventilator, it doesn't mean that you will need dialysis, but some patients are requiring it. And these are all life-saving, devices that become difficult decisions in the end, whether to continue these processes and procedures or whether to, take them away. And when we come to a point where we have to decide whether to take it away, those are really hard decisions in life, whether we're in a COVID situation or whether we're in an everyday life. So it is important to think these things through of what would I want and how can I make this easier for my family members and my loved ones, and express your wishes. They're never easy discussions, but they are really important.
Thank you, Karen. And that's one thing that I tell clients I work with is doing your will, doing your power of attorney, doing your healthcare proxy is really done out of love for your family and those whom are active in your life, because you're telling them what your decisions are, what you would want, so they don't have to guess or make a decision that you may not would have wanted. So it's a really important gift that you can give to those around you, is to have a plan in place.
Right.
So
sorry, Sarah. And just to add, when somebody who is in distress, whether you're in COVID distress or just distress in general, once you get to the hospital, these decisions are not a good place. It's not a good place to make these decisions when you're in the hospital. Because you have to remember is, the doctors and the nurses, they're there to save your lives, and there's a lot of misconception that, well, the doctor went ahead and did this, or, that's what they're there for. So just think, again, plan, think ahead of what do I want when I get to the doorstep.
Thank you, Karen. One program I want to point out that we recently recorded is that under the remote notarization and remote witnessing that Governor Cuomo has permitted attorneys to do, we have a program on our website called Should I Do My Will Now and How? Because in addition to your healthcare proxy and power of attorney and living will that Artem spoke about, we're also able to execute wills and trusts remotely through Zoom, through Skype, through FaceTime, using our office staff to witness and following the remote notarization procedure. So at this time, I'm going to ask each of the panelists just to answer quickly one last question, which is, while our audience members are home social distancing, what's one important task that they can complete with legal, with care, and with financial planning while they're home? Give them one job to accomplish. Artem?
Oh, okay. So me first. I would say do your estate planning documents, the ones that we just discussed. Talk to your attorney. Get your power of attorney, healthcare proxy, living will, last will and testament, and trust if necessary done now. Right. That way, that's off your mind. You don't have to worry about it potentially ever again.
And even if you want to worry about it again, all of those documents, they're flexible and you can change them so they can grow with you throughout your life. So if you make a decision now, you're always able to change it should your life circumstances change. And that's why it's important to maintain a relationship with all of the kinds of professionals who you see here up on the screen, your attorney, your care manager, your physician, and your financial planner, as well as your accountant. So Amir, would you be able to give us one task to do while everyone is at home regarding their finances?
There is a specific word in life that if you pay attention to it, it will help you. And that is called planning. And planning are the three things that are very important. During these times, prioritization of what you need to plan is very, very important. See what's important to you and plan on what is happening to you now, what do you think you want to happen to you, and what kind of resources, what kind of options, what kind of choices you need to have available to you to bring about those prioritized plans that you put together. So introspection, it is stressful time, but also we can take some time and look back and say, these are the things. If it were possible, what would need to happen? That is a great question. If it were possible, what would need to happen? And never ever think that you don't have options, because with senior law day and resources that are available to you, these are people that are designed to serve and help. And if they don't know the answer, they will get you the right person that will give you the right answer. You're in a good community.
Thank you so much, Amir. And Karen, what would you give to everyone as advice or homework to be able to do while they're home?
So again, back to who's your healthcare proxy? Mostly this will go to, if you don't have anybody assigned, you could go to the Department of Health or New York State and download the healthcare proxy form. It does not need to be notarized. You can go over it with your family. It's important to decide what is it you want and discuss those things with family. It often falls to the spouse if you have not put an agent in place. Sometimes an agent isn't it doesn't have to be a family member. Sometimes it's better to have somebody who is not a family member who you know can, carry out your wishes. Because again, these are very difficult, times and difficult decisions. So I would urge everybody to think about your healthcare proxy and to think about your wishes and what's important to you.
All right, thank you, Karen. So I'm going to turn the screen back over to Elena, who's just going to share the Senior Law Day site with us and to show the list of upcoming programs, as we have an entire program coming up on the Medicaid changes, as well as we just did a program on how to get your will done now and how. And we also have a number of exciting programs coming up, one on how to stay safe with senior scams. We have the Attorney General's Office for Westchester County going to present on all the things that they've seen, as well as how to get your house ready for sale and other sorts of financing. So Elena?
And as Sarah's talking, I want to make sure that you can all see the seniorlawday.info website. Let me go up to the top of the site. That is seniorlawday.info. All of the programs that Sarah was referencing are located right on our homepage. You'll see that we'll be posting this webinar right up to the main page after the recording is done. We'll have any of the registration links for the upcoming programs available here. This is the schedule coming up. The next one's going to be on April 30th and then on May 5th, but the Medicaid redesign one is scheduled for May 12th. And there'll be more coming up. We'll be scheduling events at least through June, if not beyond. We have an awful lot to share. Again, the Ask Us button is right here. So you can click on this button. It'll open up a screen where you can give us your question. If you'd like to give you an actual phone call back, please make sure you give us your phone number. We'll also be asking for your email address. That information will be shared with no one except the person who's working to answer the question.
Terrific.
I wanted to just say thank you to everybody for the quality of your questions and for the deep knowledge that informed all of your responses. I think it's a great evidence and testament to the type of expertise we have available for all of Westchester County seniors for any question they may have to ask. Sarah, did you want to add something else?
Thank you, Elena. I just wanted to let the participants know that if you did ask a question on our Q&A and we didn't answer it because it was situation specific, you will be getting an email from a member of the Senior Law Day Collaborative who's on this presentation today, either one of the co-chairs or one of our presenters, to answer your question, such as, our New York State Partnership long-term care policy is still available? The answer is yes. We'll send you the link to the New York State Department of Health, and if you want, as well as connect you with someone who can help you with that. So we're always here to help with the questions. We have a community of professionals that's over 160 people deep in financial planning, in care management, in library services, in end-of-life services, and healthcare management. So we really are able to answer a broad base of questions. And if we can't answer your question, we'll try to figure out the right person to connect you with. So thank you so much for attending the program today. We hope to see you next Tuesday at 10 a.m. for our next program. Please register, and we look forward to serving you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.